Let's talk about, what people are expecting. People are actually expecting high-quality apps all the time. And most of you are Android developers, so one of the pain points that consumers talk about when they compare between Apple and Android is the quality of apps that they use and do it. And they demand it because they expect applications to be functioning all the time, as expected. They expect user experience to be discoverable, and they expect the UI to be easy to use so that they can figure it out, make it easy to use and consume. They also expect the applications to be working flawlessly on all devices. Like we are talking about thousands of devices, if not tens of thousands of Android combination and permutation between Android and iOS. And the user expect the application to be performant. If your application is not performant, you are guaranteed to lose consumers, you're guaranteed to lose revenue. And application users expect to be working on under all circumstances, whether you're on a 2G, 3G, 4G network or a very small or a low-end Android device versus a Samsung S20s of the world, but you expect it to be performant, and that's what customers expect in today's world. And they want it visually pleasing. As the applications are coming in, they want to see it that, hey, it looks easy and beautiful to use, because people are spending hours and hours on the applications. And it should be world ready. I was talking to somebody earlier today that, look, languages, the locales, the RTLs, right, left to right to left, all these languages in combination and permutation, people just expect. A lot of people travel to you from different countries to here, and they change their setting, and they expect the applications to just behave where they are and how they're using it. And most importantly, that they want immediate access to the latest features. The days are gone where you're waiting for weeks or months for the new releases, right? When the operating systems are released over the wire with the latest technology, the applications just cannot wait to be released. And that's where the key challenges come, that engineering teams must release applications not only faster, and when I said read weekly, because one of the reports that I read earlier is that the great teams actually release applications under a week. If you're releasing once a month or even twice a month, you're already behind the top engineering teams in the Android ecosystem. And not only they want it to be releasing, but they also expect that your quality is maintained over the years. And the only way that we can release these is by increasing the test automation. You don't have time as developer to not only build feature, but also regress hundreds of features that you have built over the years. And not only test the features functionality, but test for performance, the visual quality and combination and permutation. How do you validate that? And the existing tool sets that we have today, whether you're using Appium or whether you're using Espresso of the world or you're using any other third-party tools, it just doesn't solve the problem. Do it, or if you are hiring a lot of manual resources to test it, it's time consuming and it takes time to go and solve that problem. However, in today's world, people either test it by two ways. Either you hire a lot of manual resources and say, go test my application, distribute it through Hockey app or Intunes or test flights, or run it through automation. And today you write automation by writing code, right? There is no other way to kind of create the test to do it. And that's what we are going to talk about in the next few slides, that look how people are using it today and what are the challenges to really speed up your test automation that enables you as developers to release your application faster. And in the end, we are going to quickly go through the demo, is that how in few minutes you can actually not only create your test, but you can also create it as part of your CI/CD pipeline. So what are the challenges? The first challenge is just functional test authoring of the test. Today, if you hire somebody to say, go write my test automation, they need to know the engineering skills. They need to know the software engineering skills. They need to install the IDEs. They need to configure the environment. And before even you start writing a single line of code, you need to install IDEs. You need to connect either the device or you need to connect emulators or physical devices to just configure it up and running. Once you pass that hurdle, which will take hours, then you have to figure it out. What are the underlying framework you are using? If you're using native versus web view versus hybrid views, it just causes a lot of problem to how to create and run that, right? And that's where we see the kind of the challenges that and it creates even more problem that when you create APIs and you have a mobile browser and you want to intertwine your test, you just simply can't do that today because you have to have different tools. Some people use Postman, but it won't integrate with your APIs or with your mobile app testing. If you do mobile app testing and you have scenarios on your browser, you can't do that either. So it creates an environment that actually costs more time to run the test for you. And also, special environments, like, if some of you may be working on Android and iOS, right? You need to know the underlying APIs infrastructure to enable the test. And the existing today's approaches don't provide that. And that's what we are trying to go to that. Look, today, in order to accelerate, anybody in the engineering team should be able to create tests, which we call it the no-code test automation, without knowing underlying infrastructure. High fidelity of functional tests, the assert that a lot of people uses. I'm assuming a lot of people have used assert classes and validation in Android ecosystem. So you can actually use that out of the box in the no-code platform instead of dependent on the operating system to get you that data. And also the special environment, like, the accessibility configuration, those takes time and configuration to do it in the existing test environments or your existing Android studios as well, right? So that's where the no-code comes into the picture, that it shields and creates the abstraction layer from your knowing about the code, from going level up, what the user is expected, and be able to create it without access to any of the source code or without access to underlying APIs and be able to create that. So that's kind of the number one problem that people run into. Number two problem, the developers that we talk to complain all the time, okay, finally I created the automation and now I want to run on 20 devices. I actually can't run it, because my application and the PWA, if you are using the progressive web app or you're using the web views, it actually changes based on your form factor. If you're created the test using automation on Samsung S20s, and now you want to run on tablet, and different variation of tablet, the progressive web apps changes the behavior. It shows different approach. How do you make that resilient on it? And that's where the issue comes in, is that the ability to find where I clicked, and if that click behavior or if I clicked on a button and that button location and things changes on a dynamic content, how do I find it and how do I run it? And that's where a lot of people run into the resiliency problem. And in the existing tool set like Appium and even in Android Studio, there are no machine learning algorithm that baked into the platform that helps you identify the contextual data and also identify where the things are happening, whether people are using OCR or image recognition or other aspects to clearly identify. And that's one of the biggest problems that people have, both with the underlying frameworks, but also at the dynamic content level. And that's what we are trying to do is also abstract that level as well. So instead of writing code to say, hey, find an element of login and perform actions, click on it and perform actions on it, what we are trying to do is that shield it from there. And I said, look, users should be able to say, here's the button that I need to click on. And machine learning component and the image recognition should be able to identify that on its own rather than playing with the application or writing the code to determine that. Because if you run the same test on other devices, it's going to fail. And most of the people have run into that problem, that is one of the key resiliency problem that we see all the time. And the last but not least is the test execution. Right? It takes a lot of time to run not only at scale, but fully integrated as part of your CI/CD pipeline. And what it means is that your ability to, as soon as the product change is happening, you create your feature test in seconds or in minutes, which you can't do it today, and then integrate it as part of the CI/CD pipeline so that people can actually test it effectively, and they have the ability to run it across multiple aspects or multiple devices, Android and iOS and tablets and things. And today what people are doing is effectively buying things in-house. A lot of you have on your own devices that you have it in the developers. I'm assuming a lot of people do that, right? And I was talking to a company earlier. They have like 200, 300 devices just to configure it and run it as the CI/CD pipeline, which is not only time-consuming, but it's a very costly aspect as well, because you have to maintain those hundreds of devices. And when a failure happens, what happens? People say, oh, I can't check in my code because a product change happened. And the product change happened because now the test failed. Now people have to go and update the test again and run it and figure it out what's happening. So what we did as Kate said, look, this is too much disjoint. You have to work with different devices, different configuration, different environment, and running that at scale. All those things causes a lot of friction how people can effectively go run it. And that's where our approach comes into the picture. What we have done is that we have not taken as just yet another test automation tool. What we have done is that we have taken the experience of a QA, right from getting the environment, running the test, creating the test, running it, and executing on tests. And I'll show you quickly in the demo in a second. And what we did is that we took that whole no authoring mechanism and said, look, how can we easily access the device, create simple test automation, and run at scale? And not only that, give you visual quality, monitoring of your performance characteristic, crash analysis right out of the box. So that's what I'll quickly demo it in how we have addressed that particular thing. So let me just pull that out. So once you come into the Sofy, I'll show the number one thing, right? How easy it is to get your own environment up and running. So you can go into the device lab and say, look, I want to actually test a basic scenario of one of the apps I have on one of the devices. They are all physical devices. You can pick any of the devices depending on what you want to test on. So suppose I want to test on Samsung S20 as an example. So I have now a Samsung S20 available. Let me get that in a minute. So now I have and under 5 seconds, I have my own device. They are physical devices running in our data center that you can access it. You can access it from Android Studio. You can access it from the mobile browser. And I have application up and installed running. Right? Today, when you need to run the automation, imagine what you need to do on whether you're using Eclipse, whether you're using Android Studio, or you're using Appium. You spend time on just configuring the environment. So under a few seconds, I have my environment up and running. Now what I can do is that I can actually just go and create simple tests in seconds. So I can just go and create and say, look, I want to create the automation. Okay, it's still installing the application, I think. Now, its network is a little bit slow. So while we are running this one, you can see that on the right side, I can actually configure however I want to see it. I can run on different environment. I can run it on I can integrate it with the API, I can simulate different location. So all of those things are kind of baked into the experience. So now if I want to create a quick automation, I can actually go create, what error am I getting? Okay. So I just had a little bit download issue. So I can actually just go and create. My application is installed and running. So now I can actually start the quick recording. So I started running it now. I have the application installing it on this one. And then what you can do is that you can actually change different applications as well if you want. You can actually extend. It's again installing a little bit. Just a second. Okay. So now I want to go, sorry, I just did the reset on reinstalling the application. That took a little bit longer. So now if I want to go run the test, I can actually quickly go into, this is a rover app, find app. I can actually go in and perform actions on it I want. I can do different things. I can use variables that I want to test on. So suppose if I want to test for a quick application, I can, or a zip code, I have the data available now, I can test. And one of the challenges that the Android Studio has is the ability to validate and test on different mechanisms. Meaning, if I want to create an assert, it takes I have to write 5-6 lines of code just to find element, run the test, and perform those actions. I can actually go do that out of the box. I can say, hey, I want to create an assert. So I can say create assert, and I want to just say, hey, I have this boarding icon here. So now I can actually create these asserts, and I said, look, I want this content to be available, and I can define different things that I need it to be done, and here's the value that I want it to be tested, right? So now I can get the boarding in place, and I can create the test, and I can run it. I can also actually define bottoms up. One of the challenge engineers have is that, hey, what if I'm running threshold, what my performance is. So you can define your threshold. You can say my application should not take more than 1 second to upload. Today, you have to write code to figure it out what's happening by using different APM solutions. Or you have to actually, after the fact, investigate where went wrong. So in this one, you can upfront define what the value, what my threshold should be, and they'll be able to run that application for you. And once you define that, and you can run this test on hundreds of devices, and without worrying about that, hey, is the test running? Is it failure happening? Is it something else going on? You don't have to worry about any of those applications, and it will actually give you the results out of the box. And once you run it on hundreds of devices, you can actually see the results quickly on applications. So the results that you can see on performance and characteristics that needs to happen, how the results are shown. You can quickly see it on this one of the results. As an example, here you can see all the characteristics of the application that's happening, right? Device metrics. If you have defined any threshold, you don't have to worry about writing any of the code. So the no-code platform gives you ability to author in minutes, or its ability to create and run it at a scale as part of integration with your CI/CD pipeline. And it also gives you, if you define your upfront threshold, it will automatically identify the issues that's happening and be able to identify that. And not only that, if the product is changing, it will actually identify all the visual differences as well. Today, you have to write 4 or 5 different tools, or use 4 or 5 different tools to give you that differences and enable it. That no-code platform enables those applications that give you the results and integrate it out of the box in your CI/CD pipeline. So you can create automation and run it. And that's what we are trying to do. That, look, industry has been spending so much time and literally wasting time on creating test automation using coding, and then maintaining it and running it, and finding engineering resource to go do that. Instead, that anybody should be able to create tests faster, easier, and be able to run at scale. Actually, I'm right on time with the 1:30. I don't know if you have the Q&A later, or we are at booth 26 as well. If people have any questions, reach out to us. We can help address and make the engineering productivity the goal for our collective ecosystem. Thank you.